I've chosen to title my comments today, What Happens When All Are Welcome? And I'm inspired by a number of things, but I've really been pondering why it is that it feels so many places like people are not welcome. In my particular craft, the craft of honing skills in those who will go and be leadership in communities and parishes, I'm very concerned about how we will survive the wrath of the unwelcome. And so it sent me back to my days in my PhD program, where I was really exposed to a lot of continental as well as analytic philosophy. And I ran across a couple of people I want to raise up. One was Emmanuel Levinas, a Lithuanian Jew who literally entered the French army and was captured. And captured by the Third Reich, he realized his own humanity was only being recognized by a dog. It was only the dog, another sentient being, that acknowledged him, came to him, sought to be connected to him, that helped him hold on to his own humanity. And he came to conclude that there's something about human beings that we always corral folks off. And there are those who we accept in our little circles, and then there are those that we other. And as a result, then, when he was literally out of that scenario and back into his studies, he began to think about the metaphysics of otherness, how it is that we accept some folk and reject others. He began literally to think in terms of what otherness is and whether we have any ethical responsibility to other human beings. Finally, he concluded, really and truly, the ontology of human beings, the beingness that I see right before me, in order for me to encounter you and to be sincere about welcoming you, I can't first think about you as a human before I think about me as someone encountering you with an ethical view of your humanity. If I first think of you as someone I reject because you look a certain way, you're shaped a certain way, you go to certain places, you practice certain things, I've already othered you before I've ever come to know you. Now, Levinas's work, a whole corpus of things that he wrote, quite dense, I might say, inspired another wonderful continental philosopher that many of you have heard of, Jacques Derrida. When Derrida died in 2004, the very president of France talked about what he had contributed to the world. Derrida wrote many works, but one little small book entitled Hospitality inspires me today because he began to think about it critically. Why are we so inhospitable? As a matter of fact, he came up with an aphorism that says, there is hospitality and there is hostility. The problem we have in America recently has caused me to wonder if welcoming is a hard job. What makes hospitality a hard job? We know that it takes a lot to create an environment of welcome. I might say, though, that you have really mastered it here. But I find that even in our homes, we have a general mastery. We'll invite people in and say, make yourself at home. But how much do we really mean it? I mean, are we going to let them go and look through our closet? Are there aspects of your home that you're really going to cordon off? I will tell you, as an admission of my faith that there are in my home. Places you wouldn't be able to go to because I haven't had the chance to attend to them. But the reality is we show ourselves friendly in a lot of places. I can go to the grocery store. I shop at Kenny's and Giant most of the time. And people I don't even know will just say, or smile, or even hello once in a while. That feels like hospitality. But I don't know how much it carries. What is the weight? And then I find that as I look at the landscape of America where I live, where I patriotically claim myself to be American, how much am I received in the greater span of what America is? When we say Americans, does it include me and my tribe? How many of us are really welcome here? But I suggest to us that it is sometimes very hard to be hospitable. How hard is it, though, to smile at a stranger, to offer a bottle of water to a traveler? And does hospitality require of us just these gestures of kindness, or is there really an invitation to change our hearts, to seek for our hearts to be so clean, so pure, so capable of inviting others into our lives, into our spaces, not so that they invade them, but so that they understand that you have the reverence of their humanity at the forefront, and it makes a difference that they are a fellow human being in this plight we call life. Well, I have to say, it is important for us all to acknowledge there are reasons why we don't have as much hospitality as perhaps Derrida would suggest we should. Because in his philosophy, he came to conclude that unconditional hospitality is impossible. There's always going to be some kind of condition we place on our encounter of the stranger. There is always going to be some way, somehow, that we are prohibited, either in our own imagined fear or in the fear that is planted in us by many different avenues. If the truth be told, the rationalities are unending how we get to be distracted by those things that cause us fear. You can read the newspaper, and it creates in you a certain feeling about one another. The method of fear and the tactics that we've seen in recent times have really gone over the top. I mean, like, really, the fear factors are like on 2.0. And I'm wondering, what are our children thinking of the ways in which we alter our own behaviors that we have grown up with, that we believe in, that we claim are part of our own system of thinking when someone threatens something that we value? I've never seen the kind of changes I've seen recently. That story that was read about our popular culture and a woman simply trying to infuse the things we do in Sunday school or any kind of church gathering when we're simply trying to instill in our young folk the appreciation for other human beings. To find that we as a community have come to a place where we want to outlaw friendship and kindness and hospitality, it begs the questions that were raised by these philosophers. And it puts us in a tremendous situation that, for me, brings up Whistling Vivaldi by Claude M. Steele, who was the Lucy Stern Professor Emeritus now in the social sciences at Stanford University. Steele's book, Whistling Vivaldi, How Stereotypes Affect Us and What We Can Do, tells the story of many stories, but this one story of Brent Staples, a young black graduate student at the University of Chicago. Staples recalled, and I quote, "I became an expert in the language of fear. Couples locked arms and reached for each other's hands when they saw me. Some crossed to the other side of the street. People who were carrying on conversations went mute and stared straight ahead as though avoiding my eyes would save them. I'd been a fool walking the streets grinning, 'Good evening,' at people who were frightened to death of me. I did violence to them by just being. How had I missed this? I tried to be innocuous, but didn't know how. I began to avoid people. I turned out of my way into side streets to spare them the sense that they were being stalked. Out of nervousness, I began to whistle and discovered I was good at it. My whistle was pure and sweet and also in tune. And on the street at night, I whistled popular tunes from the Beatles and Vivaldi's Four Seasons. The tension drained from the people's bodies when they heard me. A few even smiled as they passed me in the dark," end quote. Now, if you know Vivaldi's Four Seasons, that's a very, very popular classical song, right, or songs. But what it really calls up for us is how stereotypes function in society, to wall us off from each other. And I want to suggest today we must resist this. This sounds so basic and fundamental, but as a society, it becomes so important to invest ourselves in changing the nomenclature, changing the ways in which people encounter with each other. Because at the end of the day, it is relationships that make the difference. And because stereotypes have pushed us into these walled-off spaces, it reminds me a lot of what W.E.B. Du Bois, wrote about in one of his major accomplishments, a manuscript entitled The Souls of Black Folks. If you've read him at all, you've read this comment. He says, it's a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on them in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder, end quote. But I want to suggest that hospitality is a reliable response to fear, to the fear of others' dagger eyes looking at you. You just be hospitable. You just go right ahead and give a great big smile. It's the kind of thing that it's like killing with kindness. You'll be surprised what you can cut through that seems palatable in your real everyday life if you will just show yourself friendly. And I realized that not everybody's looking to create the beloved community. But if we are, and that is our collective will, I promise you, that collective will can win out every single time. And I do believe that in this moment, we're all being called to a new order. And that is an order that says all are welcome. Yes, it's like swimming upstream. It is very much like trying to survive a tsunami. It It can truly be trying, but if you will grab a hold to your clean heart and go through life showing yourself friendly, welcoming all, the foreigner, the stranger, tearing down the walls and building up the institution of life, I can promise you things will change. Amen.